Everybody's dancing on the graves of video games this summer, and I think this is something that is confusing a lot of people that are establishment within the video gaming industry, because you're seeing a lot of praise, a lot of dancing, and a lot of celebration online for a multitude of games that have basically flopped this summer. And I think this is a situation that we're seeing in the opposite end with some games that are successful this summer. I'm talking about Black Myth Wukong, The First Ascendant, Elden Ring Shadow of Erdtree. These games are being celebrated, but there's a whole host of other games that are being pushed to the backside and celebrated for their monumental failures. And of course, I'm talking about Concord, one of the biggest failures of the summer, a $200 million invested video game from Sony Productions, along with Firewalk Studios, that has barely scratched the surface of 500 players playing the game concurrently. And it's one of the biggest failures of the summer for Sony in its history, where it's forcing Sony where it may have to hike the prices of the PS5 within Japan and the United States. Of course, Black Myth Wukong, the success of that is probably helping balance the failure of this title, but it's a failure nonetheless. And I think we're seeing more titles like Dustborn, a collaborative effort from the consultancy firm known as Sweet Babe Inc., along with the US government that has its own counter disinformation video gaming funding organization, where they're actively funding video gaming organizations to actually put out video games that actively push against narratives within the United States of America that go against the government. And this is a shocking thing that we're seeing nowadays, where video games have become propaganda. They have been compartmentalized and merged within the system of big corporations and big government. And I think when you look at these elements of the video gaming industry today, where we get so much political activism when it comes to gender pronouns and overall racial politics that we see within society being displayed in a video game, where the gameplay is the third or secondary or tertiary thing that developers are focused on, gamers are going to be annoyed. And I think that's what we're seeing in this flop-tastic summer for the video gaming industry, where we're seeing multitude of titles that have been having the supporting and backing of games journalists, games developers, and just overall social media presence that are absolutely falling flat on their faces. And it's just not limited to these two games, Dustborn and Concord. There's so many games that came out this summer that are doing such a terrible job, where it's just leading to an overall celebratory atmosphere for at least the gamers that really want quality games. Because if you haven't been noticing this summer, so much terrible games have been coming out. You can see the list of games right here along with Concord. You can just go back to Kill the Justice League when that game came out. That was one of the worst games of the year in January, and that was just the start of the year. One of the worst games came out back then. I think we just forget how much terrible games, how much pandering, how much political progressive ideology has been thrown at the gamers just this year alone. And to see all those games actually fail, it's gonna lead to a little bit of celebration, and I think that's what we're seeing nowadays. But of course, people that don't understand the current situation in the game industry, they're befuddled, they're astounded by the situation. They don't know why game players are praising the failure of Star Wars Outlaws or any other game like Concord, when in actuality these game developers that have been working on these games absolutely hate the gamers that they're making the games for. You can see that in their overall discussion about the gamers themselves. You can see the developers mocking the gamers, calling them talentless freaks, losers that just need to get out of their mom's basements. These are the people that want you to buy their game. They're insulting the game players. And this is beyond just them forcing their personal politics in the face of the game players. This is after the fact the game players rejected them. And I think this is a situation that we always see with these game developers of the modern day age, where they want to force their ideology onto the gamers regardless of making a good game, regardless of making something that's actually visually appealing and stylistic, and get mad at you once you reject the game that is not made for your taste and style. I think that's the situation that we're seeing with Concord, where Concord was searching for a definitive new modern audience of Chinese grandmas, or maybe some cafeteria kitchen cooks that like playing video games. And I think that's the situation that they're looking for. They're looking for their modern audience, and their modern audience did come for them. It just wasn't enough to actually fit the bill of a $200 million game. And I think this is the situation that we're seeing with Concord's failure, projecting to lose Sony over $200 million. And I think this is with a heavy ad campaign. Every developer in the Western games development sphere promoting this game on demand from Sony for the past few days. It's still barely reached over 200 peak players in one day. And that is a situation for game developers nowadays that don't listen to the fan base. And when you don't listen to the fan base are going to cheer for your failures, especially when you insult the fan base. And I think this is where we see the opposite happen with a game like The First Descendant. The First Descendant is still being cheered even though it has so much flaws within the game itself. It's predatory pricing, low drop rates, things related to the fight mechanics, but still it offers what the game players really want from a game. It's giving you beautiful designs, fun action, and things that you actually want to get and build towards. And I think that's the situation that we fail to see within a lot of the video games nowadays that are coming out. They're not making interesting games anymore. They're not making interesting designs anymore. And I think Concord and Dustborn are the epitome of that, where it's so bland, boring, uninspiring, and just so self-centered and narcissistic that it's just hard to actually focus on the game itself, because you can smell the developers smelling their own farts while they play this game, saying, oh wow, I'm such a genius. You can see that in the game development, and you can see that in the overall pattern of the game. And I think that's the situation that is leading the game players to celebrating the downfall of all of these games right now. And I think that is the thing I am happy about seeing these games fail, because it was leading to such a vast waste of resources. I think things like with Sweet Baby Inc. demanding tens of millions of dollars to destroy your game, that is a waste of money for a game developer. So I'm happy any game that is associated with them is failing, because those resources can be brought back into a game that is actually of quality in the future, where they don't have to pay Sweet Baby Inc., where you don't have to pay Hit Detection, Gamer X, Black Arrow Gamers that get their consultancy ideas to destroy your game. And I think that's the thing gamers are excited about, where we can get all this dead weight from the industry out of the way. And that includes some of the developers that are within these companies like Ubisoft, like Naughty Dog, like Insomniac, where we can get all these elements that are tearing down the industry out of the industry. So you're gonna have people celebrating the failure of Kill the Justice League, the failure of Dustborn, and of course the failure of Concord, because these games deserve that low user score, that low gamer participation. And I think that's the situation where you have gamers dancing on the graves of video games nowadays. But of course, some streamers, they're still befuddled and confused by this situation. They ponder and look into the air saying, why are people so excited about the failures? And I think it's just people scared of the reality of gaming nowadays, where gaming is infested with ideology, leading to a massive failure of a multitude of games that are coming out there that are not made to the interests of gamers. So why not dance at the failure of these games? You see the developers insulting them. These are the type of people that disrespected the gamers that they want to buy their game. These people are not respectable. So once you lose that respectability, people are going to disrespect you in return. And I think that's what's happening between the gamers, the developers, and of course the social media influencers and the gaming magazines and reviewers themselves. We are disrespecting them now, and that's why we're celebrating the failure of these games and the subsequent failure of these studios in the future. At least most of them, not all of them. Sony is going to be okay, obviously, but Sony has to learn some lessons, and I think that's what the gamers want these studios to do. They want them to learn the lesson of making a game for a gamer and not a political activist movement. And that's the thing I'm getting from the situation, but maybe I'm wrong. Tell me what you think about the situation. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Like, comment, share, subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.